Present. The ballroom of Blackwood Mansion erupted into polite applause, muted behind practiced smiles and champagne flutes raised like small crowns of hypocrisy. Sophia could barely see, as if a veil of fog had fallen over her eyes. The weight of the dress, the weight of the debt, the weight of Alexander's words. Everything felt like it was trying to crush her from the inside out. Alexander offered her his arm as protocol demanded, but his hand barely brushed against hers, the least amount of contact possible, as if it were an unpleasant obligation. As they walked down the aisle, newly branded as husband and wife, Isabella appeared beside them, glowing as though she were the true bride. "Congratulations, cousin," she said, her voice sweet like diluted poison. "And welcome to the family, Sophia. I hope you find your place." Sophia forced a nod. The chandeliers above them glimmered, but she felt trapped in a cage made of gold and expectations. When they reached the reception area, Alexander leaned toward her, his expression carved from ice. "Smile," he murmured. "You're a Blackwood now. Act like one." She did. She lifted her chin, let her lips curve into something convincingly pleasant, and allowed the cameras to capture a woman who looked like she belonged to that world. But inside, Sophia felt the truth burning. She didn't belong there. She wasn't wanted there. And yet, she had no choice but to survive there. Flashback, 20 years ago. An 8-year-old girl ran down the hallway of a burning building. Black smoke filled her lungs. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't for herself. "Help! Is anyone there?" she shouted. From the room at the end, she heard a faint voice. "Help, please." It was a boy, older than her, maybe 10. He was trapped under a fallen beam. Sophia didn't hesitate. She ran to him, using every ounce of her small strength to lift the beam just enough for him to crawl out. "Hurry! The window!" she cried. The boy, dizzy from the smoke, staggered forward. The fire was getting closer. Sophia did the only thing she could. She shoved him with all her strength toward the open window. He fell from the second floor onto an awning that cushioned the impact. Firefighters were already below, catching him. But Sophia... The fire reached the curtains behind her. She tried to run, but she tripped. Flames licked across her back, burning through her thin shirt. The scream that tore from her throat echoed through the night. Firefighters rescued her minutes later, but the damage was done. Second- and third-degree burns covered her back from shoulder to waist. At the hospital, the boy woke up. "The girl, she saved me. Where is she?" But when they brought him to her room, Sophia was sedated, lying on her stomach, wrapped in bandages. He saw only the black hair spread across the pillow, and for a brief second, when she turned her face slightly, those sad brown eyes staring at him before she lost consciousness again. "What's her name?" the boy asked the nurses. "We don't know yet, sweetheart." She had no identification. She was found on the streets. The boy was taken away by his wealthy parents. He never learned the name of the girl who saved him. But he never forgot those eyes. Present. Wedding reception. The reception was a display of pure opulence. Crystal champagne flowed like water. A string quartet played Vivaldi. Tables were adorned with rare orchids imported from Thailand. Sophia sat at the main table, alone. Alexander had disappeared 15 minutes after the ceremony began. "Congratulations, cousin." Isabella approached, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She offered one to Sophia. "To your marriage." Sophia accepted politely but didn't drink. There was something in Isabella's smile that unsettled her. Isabella said casually, taking a seat beside her. "Alexander and I grew up together. We're practically siblings." She laughed softly, though there was a sharp edge in her voice. "Actually, he once told me about the girl who saved him 20 years ago. He never forgot her." Sophia's heart stopped. "What girl?" she asked, forcing her voice to stay steady. Isabella leaned closer, her tone low and conspiratorial. "There was a fire when we were children. A girl saved him. Alexander became obsessed with finding her. Spent years searching." She paused, her eyes glinting with something Sophia couldn't decipher. "Until I appeared 5 years ago. I'm that girl." "Lie." The word echoed in Sophia's mind, but she said nothing. "Alexander has loved me ever since," Isabella continued, her voice dripping with poisoned honey. "But our parents, well, you know how family politics are. They wanted him to marry someone who brought financial advantage. That's why you were chosen." She patted Sophia's hand condescendingly. "But don't worry. You'll have his name, his money. All Alexander needs is for you to be discreet. I will be the woman he truly loves." Sophia felt nausea rise in her throat. Not because of the revelation. She already knew Alexander didn't love her. But because of Isabella's casual cruelty, the almost joyful glint in her eyes as she delivered this information on Sophia's wedding night. "Thank you for sharing," Sophia said coolly, rising to her feet. "If you'll excuse me." She walked toward the restroom, head held high. ignoring the curious stares from the guests. But the moment the bathroom door closed behind her, her legs buckled. She locked herself inside a stall and finally allowed the tears to fall. What have I done? She thought. I sold my soul for money. I became exactly what I swore I would never be. But then she thought of her father, of his gentle eyes, of how he worked 3 jobs to raise her after her mother died, of how he never once made her feel like a burden, even when it was painfully clear they were too poor to raise a child. She wiped her tears and stood. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup was intact. The makeup artist had used waterproof products as if she knew the bride would cry. 1 year, Sophia told herself. Just 1 year. Dad will get better. The treatment will work. And then I'll leave. She didn't know she was lying to herself. That 1 year would become a lifetime of pain. Or that the truth about that night of fire 20 years ago would change everything. Later that night, Blackwood Mansion. The Blackwood Mansion had 50 bedrooms. Alexander had given Sophia the room farthest from his, the complete opposite side of the house. This is your room, the housekeeper, Mrs. Morrison, said with obvious sympathy. Mr. Blackwood asked me to make sure you have everything you need. The room was beautiful. Walls in soft gray tones, a king-size bed with Egyptian silk sheets, a walk-in closet bigger than the apartment Sophia grew up in. But it was cold, impersonal, like a 5-star hotel room. Where is Mr. Blackwood's bedroom? Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. Mrs. Morrison hesitated. East wing, ma'am. The sir, he preferred to keep his quarters separate. Of course he did, Sophia thought bitterly. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. When the housekeeper left, Sophia carefully took off her wedding dress. She hung it in the closet, knowing she would never wear it again. Then she put on a simple cotton nightgown, one of the few pieces of clothing she had brought from home. She lay on the enormous bed, feeling smaller than ever. Her phone buzzed. A message from her father. My dear daughter, I hope your wedding was beautiful. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. Be happy. I love you. Sophia pressed the phone against her chest and cried silently. She didn't know that Alexander was on the other side of the mansion in his office, staring at an old, faded photograph. A photograph he had carried for 20 years. It was a newspaper clipping about the fire. The image was grainy but showed a small girl being carried by firefighters, her back covered in burns. Below the image, the caption read, Unknown heroine saves boy from prominent family, suffers severe burns. Alexander traced the picture with his finger, just as he had done 1,000 times before. Where are you? He whispered to the girl in the photo. I never stopped looking. He had no idea the answer was sleeping just 50 meters away. And Isabella Harrington, watching through the window of the strategically placed guest bedroom between Alexander's room and Sophia's, smiled to herself. Her plan was working perfectly. The next morning, English translation. Sophia woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains she had forgotten to close. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then reality hit her like a truck. Married. She was married. She looked down at the diamond ring on her finger. 10 carats. Flawless, cold, just like everything in this house. Her phone showed 6:30 a.m. She got up, showered, and dressed in simple clothes, jeans and a button-down blouse. She didn't know what was expected of her as Mrs. Blackwood, but she refused to dress like a porcelain doll. When she went downstairs for breakfast, following Mrs. Morrison's instructions from the night before, she found the dining room empty, except for Isabella sitting at the head of the table, delicately eating strawberries. Good morning, Isabella chirped sweetly. I hope you slept well. Your room is comfortable? Yes, thank you, Sophia said coolly, sitting as far from Isabella as possible. Alexander already left for the office. Isabella continued as if they were old friends. He always wakes up at 5. Dedicated businessman, you know how it is. She laughed lightly. Of course you don't know yet. You two barely know each other, right? Before Sophia could respond, Alexander walked into the dining room. He wore a charcoal gray suit, hair still damp from the shower, smelling of expensive cologne. He glanced at Sophia briefly, expressionless, then his eyes landed on Isabella. And he smiled. It was small, but genuine. The kind of smile Sophia realized he would never give her. Bella, he said warmly, I didn't know you were still here. You asked me to stay a few days, remember? Isabella said sweetly. To help Sophia adjust. He never told me that, Sophia thought. Alexander grabbed a cup of coffee, still not looking at Sophia. I have a meeting at 8. I'll be out until late. You're not having breakfast? Isabella asked, her voice full of concern. I'll eat at the office. He turned to leave, but Isabella called after him. Alexander? You forgot something. He stopped, puzzled. Isabella pointed at Sophia with an innocent smile. Your wife. Aren't you going to say goodbye to her? The flash of embarrassment that crossed Alexander's face was brief, but Sophia saw it. He walked to her, mechanical, and kissed the top of her head. A gesture as impersonal as patting a dog. See you later, he muttered, and left. Sophia sat in silence, staring at the empty plate in front of her. Isabella let out a dramatic sigh. He's just so busy. But don't take it personally, dear. Alexander simply isn't the affectionate type. Except with me, of course. She winked. Perks of having 25 years of history. Sophia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. Excuse me, she said, keeping her voice firm. I also have things to do. She left before Isabella could respond, before the other woman could see the tears forming again. Sophia climbed back to her room and locked the door. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She turned on her laptop, an old model, but one she had built and modified herself, and opened a heavily encrypted folder. On the screen, a name appeared that no one in the Blackwood mansion knew. Phantom. Because Sophia Chen had a secret worth $3 billion on the black market, a secret capable of destroying governments, corporations, and yes, even the Blackwood family. Sophia Chen, the timid bride everyone underestimated, was the most wanted hacker in the world. And she had just decided it might be time to use her talents.